All right, guys, this is section 1.2 of the Intro to Cybercrime course. And we're going to begin today by talking about what makes cybercrime kind of attractive to the criminals. Okay, what makes them, what makes criminals want to go into the cyber field and the internet as opposed to just committing more traditional crimes or using more traditional methods. Okay, first off, lower cost. Not only have computers and other digital devices gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, but also other things like spam, right? So prior to the internet, if you wanted to send out spam, it cost you, whatever the price of a stamp was per person, okay? So, it's only a few cents per person, but that adds up. You do 1,000 people, that's hundreds of dollars. So with computers, though, once you've kind of had that initial investment in your device, it's essentially free to send out millions of spam emails, right? It's also a force multiplier. Same example, right? If I want to do spam, if I was going to do, spam by snail mail through the U.S. Postal Service, that would, I'd be able to reach a few thousand people, kind of, max. But with the internet, I can now reach millions of people. I can hit millions of targets, have millions of potential victims, which is something that I really could never do with snail mail. No matter how big of an address list I got, it was never going to be as big as, these mass email lists. You also have a much lower risk of detection. Okay, it is really, really, really hard for law enforcement to figure out who you are and then come arrest you and try you and convict you. Okay, you have a tiny, tiny, tiny chance of being caught and convicted of a cybercrime, unfortunately. And this is kind of due to two big things. One, the use of proxies. So a proxy, in essence, if I connect my computer to the victim can see the IP address of the attacker that is attacking them or sending them messages or whatever. Or at the very least, whatever service I'm using can see my IP address, right? So if I make a fake Facebook account and I'm using that to stalk somebody, the victim might not be able to see my IP address, but the Facebook company can. And law enforcement can subpoena that information, get my IP address, and track me down. But if I use a proxy service, that anonymizes where I am. Okay? So if I connect to a server right now from my home here in Savannah, Georgia, they're going to be able to tell that I'm coming from this place in Savannah, Georgia. If I use a proxy, it kind of anonymizes that source, and all the activity that I'm doing looks to the victim like it's coming from the proxy. Okay, so I connect from me to the proxy, and then the proxy automatically sends things from them to the target. So now the victim, or Facebook, if I'm using Facebook, or whatever service, they get the IP address of the proxy. Now, can they go to the proxy service and get the IP address from them? Sure. But if I use multiple proxies, or if I use proxies that are out of the country, the odds of successfully doing that are much lower, right? So if I link from me to a proxy in Mexico, to a proxy in China, to a proxy in France, to a proxy in Brazil, to the target, law enforcement would have to subpoena information from different companies in each of those countries in order to trace it all the way back to me. And what are the odds of that actually happening? Fairly low, right? So proxies can lower the risk of detection even farther than there already is with just normal internet anonymity, that normal level of anonymity that everybody enjoys on the internet. And then, of course, there's a lack of reporting, right? Police can only investigate and prosecute crimes that they know about. The vast majority of cyber criminal victims either A, don't even know they were a victim, or B, think, oh, this is not that big a deal, I'm not going to report it to law enforcement, right? A couple years ago, I had a credit card number stolen, right? Somebody used my credit card in Kentucky at a Walmart or something. So I called up my credit card company. I said, hey, somebody obviously stole this. That wasn't my charge in Kentucky. Can you send me a new card? And they were like, yeah, sure. And they refunded that money that the person had spent, canceled my old card, sent me a new card. That was a cyber crime, right? That credit card fraud, almost undoubtedly that he got that credit card number over the internet somehow. But did I report it to law enforcement? Of course not, because I wasn't out that much money, even if the credit card company hadn't refunded it to me. And I know that law enforcement, they don't have the time or the ability or the training to really go after these things. So what's the point, right? So there is a massive level of underreporting with cybercrime. And then, of course, there's a lack of laws in a lot of cases. Prime example, back in the early 2000s, there was a virus went around that was called the I love you virus, okay? And it was transmitted via email, and these infected emails all had the subject line, I love you. And it looked like it was coming from somebody in your mailing list. So you'd be like, oh, wow, this person that I haven't seen since high school, or this person that I work with, or whatever, they love me? What? And you click on the email and install the virus on your computer and send it out to everybody in your email contact list. They caught the kid who made that virus. Okay, he was like this 16-year-old kid in the Philippines. They arrested him, they went to try him, and they were like, wait a minute. What he did is not, or was not at the time, illegal in the country of the Philippines. We can't try him for this. We can't do anything about it, right? So even here in the United States, laws are often lag behind technological innovation, right? So technology always moves faster than the legal system. So that can be a big problem with prosecuting cyber criminals, okay? So what kinds of cybercrime are there? We're going to talk all this semester about all these different specific cybercrimes. But this dude named David Wall, back in 2001, he came up with this typology of cybercrime. And essentially his assertion, I don't know if I agree with him or not, but it's mostly okay. His assertion is that cybercrimes fall into one of these four categories: cyber trespass, cyber deception and theft, cyber porn and obscenity, or cyber violence. Okay? So, cyber trespass. Cyber trespass just means crossing a boundary that you weren't supposed to cross. Okay? This could be breaking into somebody's computer system itself. This could be using somebody's Wi-Fi that you're not legally allowed to use. This could be lots of different things. But it's essentially gaining access to some kind of digital something that you are not supposed to have access to. And this comes down to ownership. Who owns these different things? So for instance, if my neighbor has a completely unsecured wireless connection, if I connect to that wireless system and he has not given me explicit permission to do so, I am crossing a boundary. I am using a service that is not mine. And I'm using that service, I'm trespassing into his Wi-Fi service. Does that prevent people from doing it? Of course not. But it is something that is a crime and we need to look at. It is incredibly, disturbingly easy to commit cyber trespass in a lot of cases. Okay? There was a case back in the 90s where like the Department of the Navy and NASA and a bunch of other major government servers were broken into, and they found evidence that this guy had broken into them. And they thought, oh my God, he must be like this super hacker to get into all these, major servers of the US government. They caught the guy. He was in England and he had no real computer knowledge. He was just kind of messing around and going where, seeing what he could do. And and he really wasn't that good with computers, but it was just that easy. Okay, getting into places you're not supposed to be in really isn't that hard if you spend a few minutes kind of looking up how to do it on the internet, which please don't. Like, I'm not saying you should. Please, if you learn anything from this course, please use those skills for good, not evil. Okay? All right, so the second one, cyber deception and theft. This is essentially anytime you are illegally acquiring some resource, whether that's information or whether it's money or whether it's some product, any kind of illegally acquiring any of those resources falls into this category. Okay, some of the common specific crimes that fall into this are phishing, which is essentially the use of getting information out of people by using fake emails, right? So if you've ever seen one of those emails that's like, oh, this is Bank of America. We need you to verify your username and password. Please click here. You click that link, and if you're dumb enough to put in your username and password, you have been phished. They now have the username and password that you use for your Bank of America account, and they can go in and do all kinds of nasty things to it. That is illegally acquiring your username and password. It's a crime. But there's also fraud, right? So fraud, anything from eBay auction fraud to email sales fraud, all kinds of different kinds of fraud. And then there's piracy, right? Downloading music or movies or software or whatever that you didn't pay for. Those are all fall under cyber deception and theft. That is not a complete list of all the crimes that fall under this umbrella, but it is, some of the more common ones. Cyber porn and obscenity. This one is really, really dependent on local law. Okay? Different places, even within the United States, but also especially different countries, have vastly different laws about what's legal and what's not legal when it comes to porn and obscenity and kind of those moralistic laws. Here in the United States, we have the First Amendment, which protects us if we want to look at most porn. But there are certain kinds of porn, even here in the United States, that are illegal. Okay, the most obvious, of course, is child porn. If you have porn of anybody under the age of 18, that is illegal. You cannot have it. Merely possessing it is committing a crime. There's also, though, revenge porn. There is no federal law against revenge porn, but many, many states have passed laws against revenge porn. And essentially this says if you post any naked pictures of a subject without their expressed permission, that is illegal. Because what was happening was, boyfriend and girlfriend are dating, girl sends boy naked pictures. Later on, girlfriend, boyfriend break up. Boyfriend is very upset. Boyfriend posts those naked pictures that the girl sent him when they were dating onto some website, and even linking it to, say, their Facebook profile, right? That is illegal in many states. And then, of course, there's bestiality, which is human-animal porn. That is illegal in the United States and most other countries. So there is, even here in the United States, with the protections we have afforded by the First Amendment, there is porn that is illegal to view. Finally, we have cyber violence. Okay, this is any kind of injurious, hurtful, or dangerous cyber crime. Again, this is not a complete list of all the examples of crimes that fall into this category, but there's bullying, stalking, harassment, right? Those are kind of the lower level ones, but those can result in very, very damaging, very real negative outcomes for the victim. I was a victim of cyber stalking. It is not fun. It is really, really, really difficult. It is really emotionally hurtful. And my cyber stalker, I knew, was not somebody who was local, so I didn't have to be in fear of my life. But there are lots of people who have, say, ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends that will cyberstalk them, and they do have to be in fear of their lives because this person knows where they live, knows what kind of car they drive, and could show up physically at any moment, right? So these have real-world harm consequences. And then, of course, there's cyber terrorism. Okay, we're going to talk all about cyber terrorism in a later chapter, but you can have real-world death, destruction, explosions, all those horrible things you see and hear about on television about terrorism. You can do all of those from behind a computer screen. Okay, so again, there are more crimes that fall into this category, but those are the ones we're going to talk about. So that ends section 1. I will see you for section 2.